Hi, you're listening to Cafe 20s. I'm Ankie.
I'm Charmain.
And I'm Flo.
And this is a podcast about being in your 20s. It's okay not to have everything figured out, but we can explore it together.
Today, we're going to be talking about personalities. Personality tests are all the rage nowadays. Your MBTI results are like the astrological signs of the corporate world. But is that all your personality really is? Why do people seem so homogeneous sometimes? And even if we have a strong sense of who we are, how do we convey it to other people?
I wakeboard on the weekends and I surf.
That hurts.
I eat expensive food.
Personally attacked.
Ankie.
I go to Michelin star restaurants.
You're killing me, guys. Maybe jobs and things like that, they're part of your identity. But is your identity your personality? Is your personality more about your behavior and how you communicate yourself to other people? Perhaps.
So then what makes a personality if we want to dive deeper into that topic now?
I think a lot of it is the personality test. Like, I'm one of those MBTI people who like looks into Instagram and scrolls through what is an INFP, what do you do? And I know Flo does that too, because
Yes.
I've recently noticed that she marks on her contacts everyone's MBTIs, and I had no idea when she even found out my MBTI and when this happened. So I'm curious to hear.
We're nothing but a series of alphabets to flow.
So a lot of people refer to the MBTI as the 16 personality types. So because there are 16 personality types.
So what's your MBTI?
My MBTI, I used to be for a long time INFP. But then,
I'm also an INFP.
woohoo!
Virgos.
And INFPs. But then recently, so I think in the last 2 years, I actually changed to ISFP. How about you guys? What are your MBTIs? Charmain's is INFP.
Yeah, you know them all.
Don't pretend like you don't know, Flo.
For my whole life, I've been ENFP, so that's like the happy-go-lucky type. And then I did the test again for this episode, and turns out I'm an ISFJ now, which is completely opposite. I mean, I'm not super surprised because my personality has always been like 50-50-50-50 for all the 4 categories, but then it took a big swing recently.
So just to put things in context, people who are INFP are usually sensitive, creative, idealistic, perceptive, caring, and loyal. And they value inner harmony and personal growth, and they focus on dreams and possibilities, and that's Charmaine. Woo. And then Ankie is an ISFJ, right? So she's warm, considerate, gentle, responsible, pragmatic, and thorough. She's devoted caretaker who enjoy being helpful to others.
So moving on from the MBTI, another test that we did, I think as part of our corporate development, was the DISC profile.
I think actually for most people it's usually a combination of these two. One of the 2 factors out of the 4. But for me, I was smack dab in the middle of being an S, which is steadiness.
You're an S.
Wow.
I'm an S.
So you must be very even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, and tactful.
Wow.
Sure.
Very nice.
For me, I'm a CS, but I'm more C than an S.
For me, I'm a DI, which means I'm a mix between dominance and influence. Yeah. Do you think it's accurate for you guys?
I think the difference between DISC and MBTI is like MBTI is a bit more for personal life, and then this is a bit more like how you are in the professional setting.
But because to be honest, there are a lot of personality tests, but it usually just goes over my head. Like I'll be very like interested. Like for example, the DISC, I did it in the first days of training at my job, but I didn't really remember it like 2 weeks later. The only sort of dimension I took away from these personality test or like the big five MBTI disc, it's the introversion part. Because like when I was a teenager, someone said something that was quite hurtful to me, and then they were like if I say it nicely, you have a good personality, but if I say it in a more straightforward way, I think you have no personality.
Someone said
Who
that
said
to
that
you?
to you?
It was like a teacher, and that's like a pretty hurtful thing to say, especially in your formative years,
Yeah.
right?
Man.
What kind of teacher is she? Someone needs to
I think she has
fire
issues.
her.
That's her own
Yeah.
issues projecting onto you.
Oh, it's very nice of you guys. But I found out that's actually quite a common perception among a lot of people. Like they don't say it to me, but I just realized that's like a general culture thing. And I did some research into this, right? And there were some findings about it in the Journal of Research in Personality from 2019.
Wow.
Yes. So what a group of researchers did was they asked participants to describe what it means to have no personality and a lot of personality. And then they nominated like fictional characters who fit these descriptions and also rated them on the personality dimensions. And people just seem to feel that people who project themselves more would have more personality, and people who are generally more quiet and go with the flow more, they would be perceived as having no personality. So it's just basically when it's not that you don't have a personality, it's just when you keep it on the inside, people think you don't have a personality. And things like this for a long time made me feel like the world is just generally more suited for extroverts. There was a long time when I really struggled with this, like being more introverted and like being preferring to spend time on my own.
I used to be quite jealous of introverts because my manager told me once, when you're in a negotiation, the person who talks more is the one who's losing because you're having to explain more. The one who talks less is actually the one winning because you only talk when you need to talk. And often I feel like when I'm in that situation, it feels to me that I'm overcompensating my personality to make up and to show people when it doesn't, like no one asked for it. For me, that's the difference between extroversion and introversion. But I don't think it's like the difference for everyone because people are not extrovert because they're not sure of themselves. But for me, sometimes it's like that.
But we also talked about, you know, how like MBTI is a bit more of who we really are, and then DISC is how we are at the workplace. So I kind of just want to ask more about like how much of personality do you think you can show in the workplace, and like whatever image you portray at work, do you think that is still authentic to who you feel you are, or is that like a image that you are kind of forced to show to other people?
What do you guys think?
I think, okay, so because I haven't been in the workforce or been a corporate slave for too long, right? So typically in the teams I'm in, I'm the youngest person. So I think they sort of expect me to be very energetic and just, it's okay for me to be a bit more fun, which I am outside of work, and I can show that a little bit in the like in the office setting as well. I won't go full on like meme crazy on them, but it's like a more toned down version for me for sure. But I don't feel like I have to completely hide myself at work. But I have seen cases of people who are very different at the office versus when they're at home, and I think that's okay because some things aren't necessarily appropriate for work.
I read in the book it's actually also about how you define the line between your personal and professional life. So for example, some people when they get home from work, they just need to change and shower, like they need that physical change of environment. So that also built into how much like of your personal life or your personal self that you want to show in the professional workplace. But I've actually read that sometimes you have to earn your team's trust, and you have to earn your own credibility before you can be authentic.
And there's always the question coming in on a Monday. I always get asked by my manager, so how was your weekend?
Oh God, every time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a friendly question,
But it's back to like our earlier conversation about what makes a personality, what doesn't make a personality. And our hobbies and activities actually does make up a part of it, and how people perceive you in a big way.
Yeah. It's like an easy way to show your personality, right? Because like if let's say people don't ask, what is your personality? People will ask like, what did you do as a reflection of who you are as a person. So it seems like that's an easier way to find out about someone else. But I guess maybe along the way, like people just equate both of those things together. Like people will feel like whatever you do is equals to your personality, when it might not be the case, and it shouldn't be the case, right? Like your personality shouldn't be surfing on the weekends. or like, yeah, that's why I think we had a earlier conversation before this podcast about what makes a personality and what doesn't make a personality. And we kind of deep dived into, like, let's say if we take an example, people surf on the weekends. That might not be their personality, right? But maybe the reason why they surf on the weekends, that can be a part of their values. So let's say they surf on the weekends because they really like the fact that when they surf, it feels like nothing else mattered in the world, right? All they can hear is like the sound of waves, and then they're just like in the moment, and there's that adrenaline rush because you have to like balance yourself, and then another wave is coming, so that's like a challenge that you have to overcome. There's this book I read about like authenticity, and it talks about two different types of authenticity. So one is static authenticity and the other one is dynamic authenticity. So static authenticity is what we think is authenticity. It's the definition that we usually think about when we talk about authenticity. Basically, it's like sticking to your old ways of doing things forever and being consistent with whatever you did in the past. But then a new definition of authenticity, which is the dynamic authenticity, is like the book introduced another way to look at it. Like dynamic authenticity is about being aligned with what you want your future self to be, and that means along the way there can be some changes that occurs, and that means that being dynamically authentic is just accepting that sometimes there's going to be inconsistencies in the way you do things, because along the way as you grow you realize that there's different points of view that you didn't consider in the past, and that's why you acted a certain way. So then going forward, your behavior might change from the way you do things previously, but then it's still being aligned with what you believe. So I think what we could agree on is that personality is not permanent, and being authentic doesn't mean sticking to your old ways of doing things forever. And a new definition of authenticity we can adopt is perhaps being aligned with the future self we want to be, which requires changes along the way. And I think we shall find comfort in remembering that we're still in our 20s, and it's perfectly okay if we are still exploring who we are and who we are not.
Even though our world seems to be overruled by basicness sometimes, I think it's clear and goes without saying that each and every one of us has personalities, whether it's defined by your routines, values, passions, or upbringing. And sometimes we might seem to have no personality, but that's only because we choose to project our inner worlds to different extents. And no matter how much you choose to reveal, that's your choice. At the end of the day, what's most important is that the people you care about understands you.
That's deep.
Love it.
We would love to know what are some of your values and how you perceive your own personality. You can comment this on our Instagram post for this episode and follow us for any updates. Our account is at Cafe20s Podcast. That's Cafe 20S Podcast. We will also leave this in the show notes.
You can find us on all the places you usually listen to podcasts, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So subscribe, and please leave us a rating. We post episodes every other Thursday, so that means the next episode will be released on the 19th of November.
Thanks so much for joining us today. See you next episode.
Bye!